Well, he's coming.
Well, until he gets here, when he comes, he can sit over here.
Okay, all right. We have two cases tonight, 2018-22 and 2018-23. Both are site plan approvals. And we'll start off by making this statement that we are a recommending body to the Board of Trustees, and as such, the final vote will be taken by the Board of Trustees. But our vote here counts some too, you know, so we'll move forward on that basis. Are you hearing me? First thing in order then would be the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to move, approve.
Thank you, and it's a second, okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
You can't hear?
You can't hear me?
It's on here.
Okay, all right. And it's not better, it's more gooder, so. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll start off this evening with case number 2018-22P. Is the petitioner present?
Yes.
Would you please step up to the...
Hello.
On the other side.
The microphone. Okay.
Would you identify yourself, please?
I am Andrew Josie with Green Associates.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Andrew Josie with Green Associates.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear that the testimony you give tonight will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is the petition in order?
Notice is proper and correct.
Thank you. Well, would you begin by telling us what this is all about?
Two issues at hand. The first one being the township would like to renovate their monumental sign on the north side of their property. For that, they're keeping the existing masonry foundation and replacing their fixed letter display with a full color digital display, and then also adding a wooden surround for the sign. The second issue also with that is a request for relief per 8227, which would be an increase in allowable square footage of that sign. The second issue is pertaining to the special use, the standing special use permit, which is currently the north building is a government administration and business building, and the south building is a daycare. They have changed the use to food pantry, which is a community food services use. So they would still like to have two uses on the site, but under the current zoning of mixed use, a community food service is allowed. So we are here to either modify the current ordinance, the 318, or nullify it. And I'm not sure how, I guess that's up to the village to determine how they want to pursue that.
Is there any preference?
Well, it'll be in the staff report.
Be in the staff report. Okay, thank you. Keep going. Is that it?
That is it.
Okay. All right, you could take a seat there.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, question.
Just a couple questions.
Sure.
The size of the sign was determined by the price because it was easier to get a certain standard than a different sign? It doesn't matter one way or the other?
The size of the sign, yes, to get adequate display for what they want to present. It also is only about a foot taller than the existing sign. The existing sign also exceeds the allowed 50 square feet.
And this is a changeable digital sign
Correct.
with following whatever the village rules are at the time. They were one rule before, now I understand they might be changing, so they will have those same, you'll be following those same rules, correct?
Correct.
Now, sorry, Steve, now moving back to the other, the building that is now going to be the food pantry is currently being used as a food pantry, formerly was a child care facility,
Correct.
and child care has not been there for some time, nor will it be again.
That is correct.
And are there certain standards that the building has to meet to be a food service facility?
Yes, and actually, it's undergone a few renovations that have gone through the building department and have complied with those requirements.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Coyne.
So staff referred to in their report that there should be no flashing of any messages.
Yes, I think there were 3 stipulations for that sign, no flashing,
The dimming,
the dimming, and also request that it be turned off at night.
so on the latter, the request to be turned off at night, what is your response to that?
They're willing to do that.
So how's the imagery gonna be? Is it gonna be like a crawler? Or,
There are also, during the appearance review meeting, they indicated that there was a fixed messaging requirement, so it can only change, I forget what the duration was, but there's a specified amount of information that can be displayed at one time, so we'll be compliant with that as well.
okay. Other questions?
Should we ask you now, just because it came up at the last meeting also, the village is changing that changeable rule, correct?
Yes, right now it's once in every 24 hours, and once it's modified, which I hope will be soon, it's once every 20 seconds. And you can't roll or swipe across, it has to change right away.
But it can change with one display and then 20 seconds
That's
later, and
right.
just keep doing that throughout the day. That's fine.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Why don't you have a seat?
Okay.
We'll ask for the staff report now. Who's gonna, Carrie, you gonna do that? Okay, good, thank you.
All right, good evening. I request that the Plan Commission report be accepted into the record as written.
Granted.
Thank you. So we are here tonight primarily because of this request for an LED changeable copy sign, but this is located on a lot that's greater than 1 acre in area, so that prompts the site plan approval. And then the gross surface area of the sign face is greater than 50 square feet, which would be included as part of this review process. So just a little bit of background information. The sign and flagpole are located in the public right-of-way, so we will address that as part of this review as well. And we already addressed the existing ordinance, currently for government services and a child care nursery, and we're looking to exchange the child care nursery with a food pantry. The new sign will change from kind of a static changeable copy to an LED, and division statements as part of their review of this request. The Water and Sewer Division would like to have a foundation plan for the signage so they can understand how it may impact the underground utilities currently passing through the area. And we also covered the traffic engineering as far as signage goes. There only 29 parking spaces are necessary and 33 are provided, so the parking requirement is met. The only caveat to that is currently there are like 2.5 ADA or accessible parking spaces. 2 spaces are sharing 1 accessible space, so since there are excess parking spaces, the township can either choose to diagonally stripe one of the spaces to create 3 ADA spaces, or you could change one of those 2 into a standard space, so they have that flexibility to choose one or the other. And the Planning Division is supportive of this request, and covered the site plan approval and change in use. Staff is requesting that consideration be given to vacating the existing right-of-way to locate the sign and the flagpole on private property. And we're considering this proposed sign as the primary ground sign for the campus, so to speak. There's also an existing wall sign on the main township building, and then also a directional sign near the entrance to the southern parking lot, which primarily serves the food pantry. Some of the existing signs don't comply with the sign regulations, so should any of them be damaged or replaced in the future, they must be brought into compliance with the village code at that time. And any changes in sign design must be approved by the Appearance Commission and the Village Board via a modified review process, should that happen in the future. And the Appearance Commission did approve this request at its July 11th meeting. So staff recommends that the petitioner's request for site plan approval for a public administration, legislative and executive function or government services building at 5255 Main Street, and a community food services or food pantry building at 8341 Lockwood Avenue. There was a request to change the address because the 5248 Washington Street, there's no specific address from that location, so we're selecting something where you can actually access the property. So we're requesting that in an NX neighborhood mixed-use zoning district, have that be approved based upon the proposed positive findings of fact and subject to the recommended site plan approval conditions below. And staff further recommends that relief from 82-27D2 be granted for the larger sign, and ordinance 99-11-Z-2852 be repealed and replaced as a site plan approval ordinance with the conditions set forth below. And I'll cover a few of the ones specific to the to this case. So prior to the hearing of this case before the Board of Trustees, the petitioner must submit to the Planning Division the ground sign foundation plans for its location over the sewer main. Submit a petition for vacation of a public street to vacate the portion of Main Street public right-of-way adjacent to the subject site to formally locate the ground sign and the flagpole on private property. And this will be a future Plan Commission public hearing case. We'll also ensure that a new site plan that includes this property line and the ADA parking be included as part of that. Prior to the hearing of this case before the Board of Trustees, the Water and Sewer Division staff shall review and approve the ground sign foundation plans located over the sewer main. And then prior to the issuance of permits, appropriate documentation between Niles Township and the Village of Skokie to ensure adequate access to maintain underground public utilities shall be prepared, executed, and then recorded at Cook County. And I think that covered all the other items, so that is my report. Are there any questions?
Okay, would
Alrighty.
you be so kind as to
Alright.
grab a seat?
Thank you.
Is anyone in the audience today who would like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. You'd be so kind as to step up there and give us your name and your address.
Now, my name is Robert Korajek. I live at 8320 Lockwood.
Could you speak up a little bit?
I live at 8320 Lockwood, which is
Okay.
adjacent to this property. This sign really isn't in keeping with the residential nature of the adjacent property. I know it is on a major thoroughfare, so it really isn't really necessary to have an LED sign for this building. The Village Hall does a lot of work here, and the only sign that I see is Skokie Village Hall. So I don't think it's really necessary. Should you approve it, I would encourage you to abide by the recommendations of staff to have this light off in the evening without any flashing. And it would be better off if it were of a size that was consistent with the code. So that's my request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? A motion would be in order.
For the petitioner to say that they are willing to.
Oh, I'm sorry,
abide
yes.
by the conditions,
Yes.
including this important condition of off at night.
Okay.
The petitioner is willing to abide by the conditions stated previously by Gary, and including turning the sign off at night.
Yeah, I thought he said that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move acceptance of the proposal as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Lexbody seconds. Okay, we'll call the roll now. Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Lexbody.
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas.
Aye.
Commissioner Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Quayne.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
Paul.
Paul wasn't here for that. So, okay, the motion passes. You have any idea when this is gonna come?
Well, we'd like to get it up as soon as possible, however, there's certain conditions that need to be met, so that would delay it. So as soon as you can get those in, we'll review it and put it on the nearest board meeting possible.
Okay.
Carrie?
Okay. Paul? Get myself standing up here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for being late. It was unavoidable. And I wish to thank Commissioner Mitchell for stepping in and opening the meeting for me and conducting it. The next case tonight is case... Okay, that's right. 2018-23P, site plan approval. This is on behalf of McKinley Group LLC. Is the petitioner here tonight? Please come up. Good evening. Could you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, Lee McKinney with McKinney Group. Currently, this property I own here is 5010.
Are you the owner of the
Right.
property?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you?
Yes.
Counselor, is the notice in order?
Notice is proper and correct.
Thank you. Would you give us an overview of your project?
Basically, it's a mixed-use building. Right now, it's a vacant land with a couple of trees on it. It's going to be 8 condominiums, and then on the first floor, it's going to be commercial in the front, and then parking in the rear. Parking in the rear.
I'm sorry?
Okay, so there's going to be a total of 8 units, and there'll be a mixture of 4 2-bedroom units and 4 3-bedroom units. And the first floor is going to be commercial in the front half, and then grade level parking in the back for the units.
Okay, for record, how much square footage for the commercial space?
Just a tad under 4,000. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm sorry. I got the better. Yeah, 2,600. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's 2363.
I'm thinking the whole thing.
Okay. Any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Quayne?
Do you have anything lined up, or what is your vision for the commercial space? Nobody's lined up at this time. We're basically just trying to figure what's needed over there. I had originally talked about a Starbucks, but I think somebody said something that somebody frowned upon a Starbucks here like a couple of years ago. So I don't know. Probably in a restaurant or some kind of service. Something also that would probably with the with the science and tech industry, something that maybe they could use.
Why are you building it with a space that you have no vision for, other than general commercial? Why not build it with all residential, with more residential units and parking only?
Well, just because the way the zoning is, I figured out because it calls for commercial on the first floor.
So we, the village, are forcing you into this commercial that you might not otherwise build?
Well, that's sort of the outline of the street, what they're trying to do with it. Personally, myself, if you want to let me go up 100 feet and build all condominiums, I'd do that, but
It would, tell me the market, tell me if there's any market for commercial in that spot.
there is commercials. Being that it's a corner lot, and we have it right down the street, you have both hair salons, tanning centers, restaurants. So, according, so we're basically, we're trying to grow that block, basically.
Are there vacancies nearby? Commercial vacancies in the immediate area of a half mile?
Not down, I don't know within a half mile, but I'd say within a couple blocks, no.
There are no commercial vacancies, everything is occupied.
Not that I've seen, so.
Okay, we'll talk more.
Okay.
I'll let the staff present and then we'll talk some more.
Okay.
Any other questions of the petitioner? Okay, sir, if you,
One more thing. If you were not forced by the village to make commercial there, you would then fill the site with condos?
Possibly, but I think it works better, actually, with the way the street's outlined, that the commercial stays on the first floor.
Would you put this same building 2 blocks to the west, behind, 2 blocks west of the pizza place?
Yes.
You would put a building with condos and commercial in the residential neighborhood 2 blocks west of?
Yes, because basically in that area, within a block area, or 2-block radius, that's what you have, is you have commercial on the first floor, and then you have residential above. So we're just sort of sticking with that, pattern.
And I guess I'll wait for the staff to tell me what's adjacent. Thanks.
Let me just clarify that, the ordinance does require ground floor retail. However, we do not allow any ground floor residential. So what's his choice, actually? He could put a lobby down there, he could put more parking, possibly. There has not been residential allowed on the ground floor since the 70s. So it would need a requirement, would need to amend the ordinance to allow ground floor residential.
But as we've discussed here at other times and again tonight, and we will in a few minutes some more, sometimes more commercial isn't better if it's not either in the right place or if it is to suck commercial out of the right place, filling this new space and then giving us a vacancy somewhere else. So sometimes just adding commercial doesn't work.
We don't disagree with you. However, we would have to have a study case to look forward, and staff is working on it. We are making numerous recommendations for modifications to the mixed-use districts in the downtown, but at this time, we're not ready to go forward with that.
Commissioner Berman.
It seems like that in reading the plan, or reading the report, that there's some plan that maybe I'm not aware of anyway about creating a corridor of retail and residential between Lincoln and the Research Park. Is there such a plan that's published somewhere?
That has always been part of a comprehensive plan for the downtown, and also for the Science and Technology Park. The thought was always that the downtown and the Science Park would be linked by Warren Street, and that would be a major corridor between the two uses. And their parking garage and everything is lined up with Warren Street to make that possible.
So in essence, this is kind of the first salvo on trying to commercialize that street more.
It's the first step forward in it, but that has always been a plan, and with the possibility of having parking in the Science and Technology Park, that makes Warren Street even more possible, you know, for a mixed-use type developments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the petitioner? At this time, Ms. McKenna, I'll ask you to sit down, and we'll have the staff give its report to the commission.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We'll call you back in due time. Mr. Marciani.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to request that the report be put into the record as presented.
Your request is granted.
I just want to highlight a few items. Just make sure I'm not going to miss anything based on what everyone's questions were. One issue has got to do with forestry. There is one tree that needs to come down as a result of adding the driveway. We would like an additional tree added here that is in the conditions of approval under item 1. The parking requirement is met. There are a couple, the one item of relief that was originally requested had to do with sight distance triangles. As you know, we have a 15-foot sight distance triangle. We did not used to have that sight distance triangle in the downtown area, although it was added when the sight distance triangle language was updated. There's 2 places where that is a problem. Initially, the issue had to do with their interior garage. Sorry. And that there is really no way to put the sight distance triangle here on this size lot. We did do it at 4700 Oakton, but that lot was much wider. If you were to put the sight distance triangles in, you'd be cutting significantly into their building, and they'd be losing a good chunk of their building for that. Because the parking lot is rather small and will be residential in nature, they have proposed a series of remediation things with mirrors and lights to when the doors open, to allow the pedestrians who are going to be walking along the wall to know what's going. The second was an attempt to correct the problem, which is over here, and the reason for this bump in the building was to allow the 15-foot sight distance triangle. However, they also have to add the width of 2 feet to the alley. Eventually, since this is a non-residential alley that needs to be 20 feet wide, eventually they were adding their 2 feet on this side. It is zone mixed use on both. That's actually on this entire block, the entire triangle. So that would then make it a 13-foot sight distance triangle. We think that it's a reasonable effort is being made. This area will not have any other obstructions above 30 inches, so we're recommending approval on that. One thing which we had some question about, and ultimately we do need additional item of relief. So the way that the aisle works, the aisle width works, is that when you're backing out in 90 degrees, we like to give 24 feet for people to be able to get their car out and turn. That's always measured from the rear of the parking space. For smaller parking lots, we do allow driveways to be 20 feet. That's the part that you're actually driving. And this would qualify for that. However, this is kind of a combination of 2 things. So we do have the 24 feet between these parking spaces. There is way more than 24 feet here. However, this gap between here and here is 20, which initially thought might be considered to be a driveway, but you still kind of do need to back the car and turn it to be able to get out of the garage. So they do need relief from that. However, again, these will be people that will be familiar with this particular driving movement, because these spaces will be the occupants of the building. It is going to be a closed garage, so we are recommending that that item of relief also be granted. Comments from the fire department are standard for this type of building. Comments from environmental health are standard for this type of building in case there's a food operation. Okay, so I know we like to be talking about commercialness of this site. I would like to point out, though, that this is not a discussion about the actual ordinance on its face. It's about the requests in front of us, and that this is consistent with the code. Commissioner Jeff Berman, to respond to your question about the comprehensive plan, it was actually the developer of the Science and Technology Park that requested this connection between the two, the large park and Lincoln Avenue, that when it redeveloped, that would probably be the way that a lot of people went from the Science and Technology Park to the businesses on Lincoln Avenue, because it's shorter. The garage, which is in the plan to be located at the end of the street, it is likely that there will be some surface parking that will be for public use in the short term. So this is north of Oakton Street, where Warren Street tees into Niles Avenue. There was planned to be a parking garage there. In the agreement, the development agreement with the Science Technology Park, up to 2 floors of that can be public parking. So there will be people who will be parking there and potentially moving to other spaces throughout the downtown, not just south, but also westward towards Lincoln Avenue. And I'd just like to point out that the 2 spaces in the rear are parallel. We have been having some issues with some of the buildings that were built about 10 to 20 years ago, where people who live in the residences are parking there long-term when it was shared. There's a specific requirement in here that the people that live in the building are not allowed to park in those spaces in the back. That is a condition of approval, that they need to be open for guests. The commercial parking, as long as they provide a use that is waived on the parking requirements, which would be retail uses and food service uses, they would not need to provide additional parking. So as long as it's one of those 4 larger categories of users, if it is not one of those categories, they will need to pay into the parking fund $15,000 a space to provide off-site parking. And that's pretty much it. Most of these are standard conditions.
Question?
Commissioner Berman.
The tech park plan that you suggest that desired the short commercial walk through this commercial corridor to Lincoln, when was that plan first created?
The plan was adopted in 2007.
So that was the Forest
For City.
City plan post-Searle, but pre the current developers.
And in one branch of Forest City Enterprises was a mall developer. They're mall developers.
A statement before I ask my next question. Sometimes plans change, and if the overall plan changes, we as the village should accommodate that change. From what I'm understanding now, there is no plan of these current owners of the property to build any new structures in what was previously parkland, Searle Park, the green space to the north of the tech park.
That's not been submitted into evidence, and I can't speak to that, what their intentions are at this point.
I can. I
But
will tell you.
I do know that there is one parcel that is actively being marketed that's rather large, that is in close proximity to this site.
That close proximity parcel is not part of the green space to the north side of
The
Searle
piece
Parkway.
that's being marketed, well, Pete, would you like to respond to this?
Good.
At this point,
But let me, I'll just rephrase,
Yeah.
and then we'll explain. It seems to me that this is sticking poking a finger into a residential neighborhood for no reason because of a stubborn slavishness of the village to a plan that no longer needs to be slavishly followed.
It is the plan that is currently adopted
Yes,
by
yes,
the village
I'm not-
board,
I'm just
and we are
saying,
not
but-
debating. I'm
but-
sorry, I'm going to take issue
No,
with
no,
this
no,
because
no, no.
this happens at
No,
every meeting.
I know. As the commissioner, I have the right to speak, and my speech.
That's true, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And my speech
Chairman
is
can
that
control things.
we, as commissioners, are not slavishly duty-bound to bad planning. And if planning is now bad because the tech park has changed, we should not vote for something just because it was the plan 10 years ago. If you tell me, on the other hand, that the tech park, I'm mistaken, that the tech park is going to be developing that large green space into commercial space, then maybe I will reconsider. But right now, my strong feeling is to reject the commercial at this spot, which is not a commercial area. Now, Peter, if you could explain, please.
No, Commissioner, we'll
Yes.
take that as an opinion which does not require a reply.
I'll ask a question.
Okay, that's fine.
Peter?
well, your question.
Thank you.
We've had numerous meetings with the new research park owners, American Landmark Properties. They are committed to the current plan. Their current objective is to get Building J, which is on Oakton Terrace, to be reskinned, which is the first step, and we expect to have those plans in within the next few weeks. So once they have that completed, then they can start marketing that building, and it'll be lab-type facility, which is in high demand right now in the Chicago area. So once that building becomes leased, then there'll be a strong demand and need for parking in that area, and then either the surface lot or the parking garage, which are part of the plan. First phase was to actually put a surface lot next to Building J and along Niles Avenue, which is lined up with Warren Street. However, depending on what that demand is for parking, it could be a couple-story garage also. So they are committed to continuing with that plan. I know they are marketing the entire site, and maybe in the future, as you're saying, Searle Parkway area may not be what the current plan shows, but they would come back to the Plan Commission and have to ask for that if there was a change.
But we, in the meantime, would have forced this poor developer to put a commercial spot where one is not needed, with the hope that something would develop in the future that is not currently planned.
Well, actually, over the years, Warren Street has had numerous development proposals for it. Different combinations of single-family homes have been looked at by developers, and property owners have been interested in selling. But over the years also, certain property owners were unwilling to sell, and so those developments never went through. In the subject case, the developer purchased the lot and is interested in building based on what the ordinance requires. If there are other properties on the site, we would have to look at it and say, does it make sense to continue that? Or, as we said, staff is studying, the uses downtown, and we'd have to look at it and see whether that continuation of commercial is necessary or whether we should go all residential. But at this time, we feel the plan is adequate.
Commissioner Berman?
I guess my question is actually for Commissioner Berman. I mean, if the petitioner had said that he's going to have an internal health club for the residents of the building, you'd be okay with it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so really the objection is that it might be vacant commercial space.
Precisely, or equally bad, that it will be occupied commercial space, pulling commercial off of our much-needed commercial strip, sticking it into the middle of the residential neighborhood and leaving a vacancy in the commercial strip. One or the other. Either way, we don't need additional commercial in this side street. It sits remote from the other commercial around it, and it is based on a dream of Forest City that is no longer around.
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Steve, can I go?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, Commissioner Quinn?
I, for one, appreciate the first effort to link up the tech park with the businesses on Lincoln Avenue. No one really knows what can happen because it hasn't been tried. There's already a gap between the tech park and Lincoln. This will start to narrow that gap for the first time, if I'm not mistaken. Just another sidebar, it's just a point of really curiosity. Everyone harps about the tech park and all the people that are working there and contributing to the business of Lincoln Avenue. But has there ever been a study done about how really the downtown district benefits from tech park in terms of those businesses reaping some reward because all those people there are working? Because don't they still have an on-site cafeteria and so on?
The cafeteria is in one building. It's not a cafeteria, it's a restaurant. It is open to the public. You should be able to walk in there. If you can't, let me know and I'll write them a ticket, because that's one of the conditions that has to be open. The point was to make sure that, unlike Searle, when it was there, which was a closed campus, which was basically like a fortress, this is not. And it was the intention, based off of what the Forest City did at other tech parks, is to make it integrated into the community and to provide those spaces for people to go. We have not, to my knowledge, done a study specifically about the employees of Tech Park. The major reason for that, is my understanding, is that the largest employer refuses to allow anything going through their email system to their employees. So that is a large chunk of that. I will tell you anecdotally that a very large percentage of the lunch business is coming out of the Tech Park, of the restaurants, which is why we've opened so many restaurants even through the recession. The number of restaurants in downtown Skokie has increased pretty dramatically. There are vacant buildings that are on Oakton Street that are intended to be redeveloped. We can't talk about all those redevelopments, but some of them are intentionally being held vacant so that they don't have to break a lease. So I will put that forward. I did walk down Warren Street. I believe there's actually only one vacancy on Warren Street right now, and I don't believe there's any vacancies on Lincoln Avenue on either side of the street for that block that's adjacent to Warren.
Okay.
Now, Commissioner
Steve, I have a technical question about
Yes, sir.
about the drawing for the commercial space. I understand it's a raw space. There's no washroom indicated. There's no other. I don't know if it's going to be a restaurant. Is it going to be a ventilation system?
Yeah. So They can leave the floor unfinished until they figure out where the plumbing is going to go. You can respond, Mr. McKinney can respond to that in front of the mic. We did point out in our preliminary plan review comments that if they did want to do a restaurant to accommodate the black iron, we don't have to have construction drawings at this point.
Okay.
The black iron was an issue in the Metropolitan building because they did not plan for that. And ever since then, the black iron discussion has come up with every mixed-use building that's happened since.
Right.
And
Okay.
for those in the audience, the black iron is the ability to be able to ventilate stuff from the commercial space through the building without it being hazardous.
That was my concern. Thank you. Any other questions?
Steve, do you have a quick map of the rest of either Elmwood or Warren so we could see the relationship once again to the commercial street?
Right, so there were houses over here at one time, and, oops, sorry, these are the townhomes. And I'm not advocating clearly for this type of development, although it was our first try, and the units are clearly too small. Some of them on the south side of the building have actually combined, and there are longer standing businesses, they've combined the units together. This building also had houses on it. It is now a mixed-use building with stuff on the front, on the Lincoln Avenue side. This property right here, which is where the white office building is, and the adjacent property to that, are owned by the current owners of the tech park, and it is actively being marketed with interest. The parking garage that we were talking about, the pad for that is right here. And it is very likely that the first phase of parking will be happening there much sooner than later, based off of the discussions that we're having about the white office building site with developers. And this is Oakton. This is the parking garage for the 8001 building.
Okay, and just one more question. The parking garage that is of great interest to me on the north side of Searle in what was formerly a park, that is something that the current developers are still considering once they get past the recladding and the rent-up of the building that they're working on.
The way the trigger, there's a very complicated series of triggers. So the tech park was allowed to occupy up until the point that they ran out of required parking spaces. We don't know when that's going to be because different uses have different parking requirements. Research facilities have a lower parking requirement than office facilities, and lab or manufacturing, which limited manufacturing can happen here for pilot plants, they have a much lower parking requirement. So because we didn't know what the final mix was going to be, when they need to build parking, they were required to build parking at 1 to 3 of locations. And they have a flat 15% reduction because of the train and very large.
And this is one of those 3 locations.
Yes, it's one of the 3 locations, and it's the one that they're allowed to go 2 stories taller should they put in parking, public parking, or we want public parking in there.
Okay.
And that parking garage would also serve that part of Oakton Street.
Okay, very good. Any other questions of the staff? Okay, thank you, Steve. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has a question or comment on this case? Please come up. If you want, you can maybe perhaps line up along the wall there. And is there a sign-up sheet there?
Yeah,
Steve?
so each person needs to please print clearly your name and your address.
And we will give you a copy of this report, and we will also notify you when this case goes before the Board of Trustees.
Good evening.
Give
My
your name,
name
please.
is Catherine Heller. I live at 5,000 Oakton Street in the condominiums, Town Square of Skokie Condominium Association. I live in Unit 608, which is the top floor, if I may. This would be our building, and my unit is right here, so I face north and west. I can see from here with some blockage this property. I also face the parking lot, and is this the old bank building?
Yes.
Okay. I have just a few points, but I
Just
do-
speak into the microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I do state these with question because I'm not real articulate in this area. But I come to you as an owner who purchased in old downtown Skokie, knowing that it was to be revived with the direction for maintenance of the residential areas. And what I thought at the time was to preserve the ambience of old Skokie. And it truly was kind of a old European village ambiance when I moved in 2005. I've lived in 3 other areas of Skokie. What I see here and would comment on is I would want the natural environment of that corner to be maintained and not destroyed with the trees and things that are there. I would like to not see lighted signs day or night there. Right now, in the last 3 years, with the signage that has been allowed on Oakton, which is present at night, all through the night, with flashing and/or those little bead lights, with the new tenants in the old bank building, which I understand are a government agency. I've been over there twice and asked that they please close blinds. Please don't let us see the lights from computers. I can even see some of the screens of the computers that are left on all floors, going primarily, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellen, 3, 4, 5, and now 7. With the commercial space, I agree with the comments that have been made here tonight. It seems unnecessary at this point. No real reason has been given to show that there is a need for that. We have many units that are still open. We have high turnover in any of the restaurants that have come, and we've lost certain restaurants on Oakton due to the requirements by the village, as I understand, that had to do with opening and having windows that opened in the front and some availability to eat along the walkway. Traffic. This area between Elmwood, Niles, and Warren has become a speedway, a dangerous speedway for children and for residents. It is not monitored. I retired in 2012, and I have visually watched because I walk a small dog, and I've had grandchildren who have been here a total of 3, 5, that's 8, 10 weeks over the last 3 years. And it was dangerous to not be with them every single minute, and I could never let them go anywhere without me. We don't have people observing stop signs. We have increased traffic that's generated, as has been suggested to me by the Skokie Police when I have conferred on this matter, by people using their GPS, and when other avenues are locked and blocked up, they come through our areas. They don't even live here. We don't have 4-way stops at the end of Warren, either here or going over to, or would be a 3-way on Niles, which is very dangerous. And the only thing that has stopped this traffic in the last years has been fixing these streets recently. And while some of us complained that, oh my gosh, we're having construction, we then realized this is wonderful because we don't have all of this traffic. And it seemed more normalized for our residential area. I have questions that might be answered later of how high is this building. I don't know how high 45 feet is, but certainly that is going to be a deterrent right into the rest of the area, of which some has been already blinded by the higher lights that have been put on that remain on at night. Being on the 6th floor, I bought there. I bought there to look up into the sky. I bought there to look east and west. And from my bedroom, I can even see southwest. We can see all of the 4th of July, but now with all the higher lights that are on at night, all night, that are unnecessary, it's diminishing part of what I considered my air rights as being on the top floor. I don't know really who to go to because these would be tenants leasing in the current building, and with a new building coming in, I agree with the comments that this would deter from Oakton, which desperately needs more people there. We are oversaturated with beauty salons, nail places, and those are the two that I would say. But I thank the board, or the commission. As far as the science and tech area, my comments there go only to what I understood was that this was government-owned now. I don't know who the owners are, but what I can say is they tore up a building, emptied it out, and left it. I've been told that they were broke.
Okay, could you just kind of keep your comments closer to the case at hand?
Sure. The reason I raised the science and tech is because he explained that some of the commercial future view was that they would be necessary for those working at the science and tech.
Thank you.
Okay? And those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Waxberg, and I basically am just here to support my neighbor Kathy, and I agree with everything she's saying. I've lived in Skokie my whole life. At this point, I just want to say, and it's not a fact, it's a feeling that we don't have a lot to say about our neighborhood, and as a resident, this is very discouraging to me. I hear just to add to what Kathy was saying, since some places have come into business, there's been a lot of screaming and yelling on Oakton, besides just a lot of vacancy, and I really truly, as just a member of the community, I don't understand how this is going to help the residents at all. I just don't understand it. And we need it explained to us a little bit further. We're not on a planning commission or an appearance commission. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I know that there was a house, one single-family home there that is now gone, and I don't understand all these buildings going up and Oakton is empty, as Mr. Berman said. It just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Moss Jacobs. I didn't really prepare a statement. I just wanted to set the record
Do you have
straight.
your address, please?
Sorry?
Your address, please.
5006 Warren.
Thank you.
So adjacent to the property that the gentleman is planning to build. So again, no prepared statement. I just wanted to set the record straight, and I know we're not talking about retail or revitalization of Skokie, but I think all of us know what Oakton Avenue looks like with the retail and the shell of the building on the science place and all of the empty retail space. So the point is, it's, you know, no offense to, again, to the gentleman building the building, but it's more of the same. It's more vacant retail. I have no problem with a building going up next to where I live, although there's a bunch of stipulations that the power lines on Warren Street are maybe 8 to 9 feet in certain spaces. I mean, I was even joking with the gentleman when I met him about how we could slam dunk a basketball over those lines. There's infrastructure issues that would obviously have to be fixed. But again, it's the whole zoning of the retail on the first floor. The Imperial Realty building across the street that they own, where the government office is now, there's huge amounts of traffic. There's many vacancies in that building since Chase left. All of Oakton is vacant. If there's a retail space next to my house, it's not going to be, no, I mean, I can't imagine anyone would rent there. So that's, just wanted to
Thank you.
give you my 2 cents. And sorry I didn't prepare anything, I'm just kind of.
Oh, no, thank you for coming up to speak.
And I was also wanted to mention the
Speak into the microphone,
yeah,
please.
sorry, the height of the building I was kind of curious about as well, and the fact that the lack of easement right against where I live, where we just put up the new fence, so it would be a bit imposing Again, I'm not opposed to progress. Every other suburb looks great. Park Ridge, Evanston, Wilmette, I could name lots and lots of suburbs that look a little bit more update than Skokie, so I'm not opposed to new construction, but maybe some adjustments. That's all.
Again, thank you. Good evening, sir.
Hi. Okay, thank you. My name is John Lias, and I live in Glenview, but I own 5006 Warren Street, so the house adjacent to the corner lot. And
Could you point that out to us on the map?
Sure. Can I? Oh,
That one? Okay.
that, okay, very good. Yeah, right next to it. And so we've owned the house since the early 90s, and it's presently rental property, but we used to live there. A couple of weeks ago, after I'd heard about the development plans, I went into the village hall to see what I could learn. And fortunately, Steve was in the office that day, and he took me through the plans. So I kind of have an idea of what's going on there. And I realize that how zoning works, and you know, if you have a compliant building, you have an expectation to be able to build. But having said that, I still have some concerns about the development of the block. And one of the things that Steve kind of sparked is a discussion of what happens with the rest of the development of the block once you place that first unit down. And one of the things that Steve informed me about is that parking, the alley, you know, is going to have limitations, and subsequent buildings that might go down the block of Warren are going to be severely limited as far as parking. And fortunately Steve's here, so he can clarify anything that I'm misunderstanding about this. But I understand that, you know, if you put in a 4-story building, it's going to be pretty hard to build anything bigger than that down the block. You're going to have parking problems, and I'm thinking that I'm concerned that it's going to really put a stick in the wheel of further development down the block, if that's what Skokie wants. I mean, we're more than content to have the house and continue to rent it for, you know, however long that's viable. But so that's my concern, and no
Okay.
questions.
Good, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Oops, sorry.
Yes. We have your name and address for the record, please.
Yes. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Burton. I'm so short. I'm Elizabeth Burton, and I live at 5005 Warren Street, across the street from the building that we're speaking of. Okay, so I'm trying to get a point across here that, like, the people have spoken. I'm from Skokie. I've lived here almost my whole life. And it just seems to me that have you been down Oakton? Have you really looked what's going on? Now, I work at Skokie Ace Hardware. God, it's awful. It really is. I mean, we got to do something here. Anything. I feel for the people that live at the property to, you know, adjacent to, you know, where we're speaking of. They have a rental, they make money off the rental. one time I came home and there was a Caldwell Banker sign in front of every house on that street. And I thought to myself, God, would this be great? Maybe they'll just level the whole street and we could start all over and maybe we can make a high rise, or not a high rise, but something similar to what we have in the condo, where the town can make, you know, money, property taxes. It seems to me like I'm all for doing something on this corner that would benefit the neighborhood, to make money, to bring in business to the businesses that are already just dying. I mean, we had a fire at Subway. I mean, the place is trashed. You know, I know you don't want to talk about that, but you got to kind of look at the whole picture here. It's like somebody had just said, you know,
Excuse me,
Park Ridge.
So let me confine your comments to
Okay,
KCNA.
I understand. But I'm trying to make the point is, if we could build something on that corner, that would be wonderful. If we could get something, you know, going where if retail, I don't know, is the answer. You just said a health club down there maybe, but I don't know if that would work. But maybe, would you even think about, I don't even know if this is in the picture, maybe a couple of really nice single-family homes? Could that be done? Do you understand? Okay,
Okay.
it's just, it's kind of a mishmash of junk.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Good evening. My name's Angelica Jacobs, and I
Good
actually
evening.
will be I live next to the property that's
Would
gonna
you
be built.
speak into the microphone again, please?
Good evening, my name's Angelica Jacobs. I'm actually live on Warren Street, right next to the vacant lot that he's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be building on. I'm all for, of course, progress. My only concern is just, I guess, more aesthetics, like the electrical lines. I noticed that our electrical line goes right through his property, through the alley.
Well,
So what's,
that'll all be cleaned up.
how would they move,
I-
okay, move in?
However, it's the most efficient and safest way to do it.
And I know that he's going to build the building right up to the property line. And then our fence is right on the property line, so I'm not sure how that works either. I'm not familiar with, again, construction or anything, but that's also a little bit of worry, what happens to the fence and then my trees? Do they get torn off because it's right out the property line
Well,
between both
it'll be on their
properties?
property line, and I think you have an easement for your property line to the building or to the landscape.
Right.
Yeah,
We
so-
just, yeah, got approved a few weeks ago for the fence, so
Okay.
it's right at the property line. And my other concern is just really with construction. I know there's been a lot of construction going on in Skokie, where the construction trucks would be, where they'd be parked, the parking. You know, are they gonna have staged areas for parking? Also, and the noise, just like with the lawnmower, lawn people, I know we have ordinance for noise, but they don't seem to follow it. They'll start coming at 7, sometimes 6, to cut the grass. So is there also an ordinance for construction and when they could begin and when
We
could
have,
they
we have
end?
certain requirements for construction and places
And
where
how
they
do the
can sell.
residents know, like, what it is, so we can make sure we keep it in check? Like, if they start at 5
No,
in the
it's
morning?
monitored by the village.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we have inspectors.
So they'll come like at 5 in the morning to make sure they're not
They're
there
not gonna,
doing
they're not
work?
gonna be working at 5 in the morning.
I will call the village? Okay, that's it.
They won't be working at 5 in the morning.
Okay. And then, okay, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sign in.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Richard Moy. I live on the other end of that triangle, 8124. My neighbor is the parking lot. Across the street is the cemetery, so it's pretty quiet. However, what's been going on, there's been a lot of construction, a lot of things moving around. You're talking about the parking situation. In the last year and a half, we're getting cars. So long as you got a zone sticker, you can park anywhere. Well, I have cars parked, by my house, in the back and in the front. I live there. I cannot even park out in the street because these cars are there for days. Now, that's just an example. So what I'm trying to get at is, you're going to go through all this construction. Is there an overall fit relative to the comprehensive plan for 2020 that's been touted since, I've been there since 1995, I think about 2005, they were talking about this. So is there a fit on how these buildings, as they go through a pop-up phase?
There is a provision in a 2020 plan for this type of construction.
Okay, because,
Yes, usage.
originally I was told that they were gonna take out the whole block and plan on putting 7 stories. And now they're saying townhomes and, all kinds of things. But I have a residential house and I cannot see or envision anything from a 1-story, maybe possibly a 2-story building existing in this kind of configuration. So in other words, I don't want to be looking up my window and seeing some neighbor, on the 8th floor looking down and looking at me, or I looking at them. And so what I'm trying to say is that, without a comprehensive plan, that's what you're going to have. Addressing this issue about how these buildings will coexist and then how they will be, existing in stages, if this is going to be a staged effort. Because originally I was told Elmwood Street was going to go away. So, it sounds like, if you're putting a little piece there, guy's going to spend quite a good amount of money, and now all of a sudden Elmwood's going to disappear. So what does that do to his, plan? Now, I don't know if that's still on deck or on board, but, how is that going to fit? Plus this thing about corridor, there was supposed to be a bridge, I thought originally, coming from the Park Science and Technology Building, going across to, to Oakton or to Warren, to these, particular restaurants or whatever retail stores on the first floor. We have too many restaurants, nail salons and everything. I don't see, how it will work. You need to have things that people can live with, clothing stores or something that sustains, the neighborhood. I don't see that happening. So, there was supposedly I thought it was a Target coming in, but that's not there now. So, without a flagship store, you're not going to have much going on there. You're just going to have a lot of, turnaround. So my opinion is that, you got to do a little more thinking.
Okay. Good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Mr. McKinney, would you please come back?
Yeah, may I make a clarification to
certainly.
a statement that was said that I made? So just to be clear, when I was talking to the property owner next door, what I had said was that parking, the availability to park sites is what restricts its development. Cooperating, the ordinance was put into place to reward people for working together. There have been multiple attempts, not just on this street, but with the entire block. That was a true statement. That there were developers that were trying to work it out with different people, but there was always 1 or 2 people that pulled out at the last minute or did not cooperate with that. We cannot force people to sell their property unless we condemn it. That is not the way we want to be doing this. But so to be clear, what I did not say that it was that this development per se was going to cause harm to the one next door, but that it will be to develop it on its own. They will not be able to put as much on the next site as this site because they don't have side access, because that site is just as wide. And this would be like any interior lot compared to a corner lot. So it wasn't that there wasn't going to do that, but maybe Mr. McKinney can address the potential development of the neighbor as a way that we might want to address that in the future to address that specific concern. Just want to go over a couple historical things also while I'm up here. This portion over here has been zoned B5, which was downtown before it was zoned CX, which was core mixed use. My intern found the actual note card that we had the case written on. It was 1964, 1965, which predates almost everybody living here. It was never intended, and the triangle to the north of that was zoned R4 multifamily way before that. So the single family homes for decades and decades were never intended to be the long-term use for this area. So it has been zoned core downtown, just like Oakton Street, for at least 50 years, as a point of information. I will address any other specific concerns as you ask me, but I want to give Mr. McKinney a chance to speak.
Okay, can I ask you a question first?
Who, ask a question of whom?
Steve, well, actually, Peter, or maybe no one, but, in terms of staff, but making a point that there's some legitimate concerns that have been raised. Well, we've gotten an education in the last 2 meetings on signage, flashing, and turning off at night, and things like that. Perhaps it's not the same sign type, so it might not be as germane, but issues on signage, can we make sure staff addresses some of these issues on Oakton that they have concerns about, and also look at the traffic control on those streets relative to stop signs and what have you?
So traffic control stuff, there's a specific commission that deals with that. So potentially, yes, there's a process for that to occur. Pete, do you want to address the sign thing? I mean, they're not requesting any relief for signage.
No, but evidently there's people that are using signs that, in ways that are not
And
allowed by
if that's
ordinance.
the case, then yes, that's something that can be addressed. Should we choose to, yes.
Yeah. Well, first off, on the, when the Science and Technology Park was approved, it was approved with numerous additional buildings which were discussed, and the parking garage on Niles Avenue. There's also was approved to have another parking garage north of Searle Parkway. And as part of that plan, there was a comprehensive traffic study at that time. And we've been implementing parts of that plan going along. So there have been improvements to Niles Avenue. There will be improvements up on Searle Parkway. And Elmwood, I think, is going to be straightened out further.
Niles Avenue will be straightened out north of.
But it won't
yes.
be eliminated. And so there are things that are being looked at. At one point, the Searle Parkway, there might be a light at Niles Center Road. Those are all things that were looked at if the science park is built out. I mean, on a more regular basis, I mean, if there's a problem now on Warren Street, we could look at stop signs, things like that. That's something we could ask the Traffic Engineering Division to examine. On signs, we usually don't have regulations on the overnight use of signs because some businesses are 24-hour businesses. Certainly, flashing is not allowed by our ordinance, and so that we could definitely go after and eliminate those signs. The coverage of windows with rope signs, I know that has even affected some commissioners here. And, those are type of things that are very difficult to regulate. Comes into freedom of speech and other things. And so the Corporation Counsel's Office has looked at it several times, and we still haven't come to a conclusion on that. It's really not a sign, it's a lighting method. So we have been giving it consideration, but we haven't come, again, to a conclusion on that.
And then just to clarify the height, what 48 feet is. So your building is, I think, 60 feet tall, so it will be shorter than your building. This is a 4-story building? Yes. I mean, your building is zoned for 156 feet, up to 156 feet. Most of downtown is zoned. Now, you're never going to get that unless the site is very large. So just like on a 50-foot lot, you can't build 156 feet. If you had 2 of them, you could get a little taller, potentially. The more...
Calculation, their building's actually above 75 feet.
Their building is over 75 feet? Is that true, Pete? You have 5 stories? Well, I don't know what the final is. 6. You have 6 stories?
Yeah.
Oh, 6
So
stories.
10 plus 15, so.
10 plus 15, yeah. So it's taller than this one by a lot. And the bank building is how much?
110, and the new.
110.
Yeah.
So that's what that, I know it's hard to visualize the scale of that. The Metropolitan is 84, that I know for sure.
Your comments help.
Okay.
Envision that.
Very good, thanks.
Okay. Mr. McKinley, you heard the staff report, you listened to the comments. Have you looked at the recommended conditions? Are you able to meet them? The conditions outlined by the staff? Is there?
As far as what Steve just brought up, as far as the... Yes,
No, the recommended conditions in the staff report. Have you gone over?
I don't, which one, which one?
Are you okay with all of the stuff that we said? All of these things, starting here, all the recommended conditions. And you got this in the note. Did you have a chance to read them? That you agree to 2-foot dedication, just,
Yes,
and most of these are standard conditions.
Right,
And then
yes.
keeping people only for the guests in the back.
exactly, yes, that's, yeah. That's the intention all the time, so nothing. So yes, I
Okay, so
agree to all
you're in
that.
you're in agreement with staff?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Is
for
there
the-
anything else you want to offer, or do you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say, for the commercial, if the village would be a little bit more lenient, like, for what I could put in there, maybe professional use building, maybe like accounting services, maybe law firm, architectural firm, maybe I could put my office in there. You know, there's other things that could go into that area, that maybe the area actually might be more diversified with it. So that's, I'm open to, I'm not set on any tenant, so anybody that wants a space and wants to occupy it, I'm more than open to listen to them.
Commissioner Quinn?
This may be for the petitioner, Steve. So how close is this building to the neighbor's fence? Is it like a couple of
Right, so-
inches? What's
so
going on there?
Just to be clear, right now, the required yards for all the houses is 0. So they have the same zoning as everybody else. I mean, it would be 0. They don't even have to put up that part of the fence, if they don't want to, because there would be a wall there. Actually, I suggest not putting it up, at least until the construction is done on that one side, if they still want a fence there. But yeah, it's, the way our ordinance is it's either 0 feet or at least 6 feet. And that's so that there could be maintenance in that area. This lot is only 50 feet wide. So, and again, if the opportunity would have been to have more lots, we could have had more flexibility with this. Generally, on small lots, we have 0 lot lines. Most of the buildings downtown are 0 lot line. Even the ones that have apartments upstairs, they're still 0 lot line. They're all in a row. But anyway, so everything is to code. I mean, what is under consideration right now is 48 feet okay rather than 45. And on this particular location, are the site triangle, is the request for relief on the site triangles okay based off of them putting in the remediating factors and the other things that are occurring? Otherwise, if it wasn't for those two things, if it was a 45-foot building and they had their site distance triangles, this building could be under construction right now.
Right.
So that's where we are.
Well, actually, one thing occurred to me, about the electrical lines, will ComEd clean all that up?
Yeah, so our other intern Alvaro is here, and we were joking about swinging on them. So we moved them there, I believe, when we took them off Oakton Street. This was a while ago, way before I got here.
There's a minimum standard.
I'll ask the former ComEd person.
Thank you. There's a minimum standard for line height for overhead conductors. And if I remember correctly, the minimum height is 12 feet. So,
Well, the ComEd lines are above 12 feet.
It's
It's
stuff
the
that's
other
been added.
cables that are below that.
okay, like the
Cable TV.
Cable TV.
cable TV.
Internet.
They're
not
pretty thick
required.
lines, though, whatever they are.
Yeah, fiber cable.
They're not required.
No.
They're in the telephone company space on those
So,
poles.
so we're looking at
It's required in the report that
all new utilities get buried. We used to require that all required lines that are adjacent get buried unless they're regional transmission or neighborhood transmission lines. On this particular site, I don't even think you have a pole. Do you have a pole behind your property at all right now?
Must be a service pole.
It's on the other side of the alley. Yeah, yeah. I think it might nip the corner. I don't think it's going to be in conflict with. On the other side, yeah. So ComEd charges, there's a significant expense to burying lines. That line, that varies dramatically. When we're talking about cleaning up the lines across the street, the range in price we got varied by hundreds of percent from where we ended up. Yes, I think we are looking at long-term solutions for creating a fund to more comprehensively bury boundary lines. On larger projects, we do require that they go under as a matter of, but we wouldn't make the ones in the front go under the circumstance. Now, if they end up being too close to the building that ComEd wouldn't allow that, then that might be an issue where we may have to do something about it, but I
You
don't,
have to put equipment in.
yeah.
Steve, would our zoning allow the petitioner to occupy that commercial space with an office if it turns out that he can't rent, or for no reason at all, he just decides
So
to put
as
an
of
office
right
there?
now, the answer is no.
Right.
If it is yes, then the issue is that, so we provide an exemption on parking for retail uses, but not for the office uses. So they would have to, we do not allow variances downtown. Everyone has to pay into the fund. So to be able to switch to one of those uses, even that are on the list, that aren't in one of those four groups, there are other uses that are not in those four groups. Then they would have to pay into the parking fund once for each space that they're required to put in, because you can't fit any more on the site. And then they're made whole. So that money goes to us, and then we create future parking in the downtown. So we've collected a decent amount of money doing that, and we have spent some of it to create additional on-street parking spaces, or some of it's going to be going into the parking.
But right
lot.
now, the petitioner should not think of using this for office.
As of right now, there's a list of the retail street uses.
And the question for the petitioner: if the village had not, by its zoning, moved you in the direction of the commercial for the first floor, would you have built this building with commercial on the first floor?
Yes, because residential on that very first level wouldn't, nobody like, I mean, basically you're walking down the street and you're looking into somebody's bedroom window, it's not appealing, I mean, so, yeah.
So you wanted to build this condo building on that site, and the only way to do it would have been commercial or office, but not,
Or turn it into a
not, or
large
parking
lobby.
lot or lobby, but it would never have been residential on the first floor.
No, yeah, it just doesn't fit there, unless it's a single-family house, but not a multi-unit building. But then again, it's not zoned for a single-family house, so.
Okay. Is there anything else you
I'd
want
just
to
like
add?
to mention to my neighbors to the north. So I talked to Mr. Moss. I thought he was actually the owner. He's a tenant, I guess. And at the time, he told me about the fence that they were going to put up, and I told him that there was really no need for it, being that there's a wall there. I told him if he wanted to, we're going to put up temporary fencing around under construction. Then at the completion of that, there'd be just a fence going across the front and then back across the back.
Well,
section.
I think our requirements is that you put up a fence anyway around the construction site.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I was just saying that that side fence at the length of the yard was not necessary, and that I'd even be willing, I was even saying that I'd have my guys install whatever fence they wanted and do it
Sure.
free of charge. Just
Okay,
be
well,
a
you can work it
good
out with the
neighbor,
neighbor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
One more comment before we vote.
Yes, Commissioner Berman.
Just to say that there are thousands of examples throughout the United States of ground floor residential in what was to be or what had been commercial areas. The most classic example I can think of that will resonate with everyone is the Hart-Schaffner Marx building on Jackson, just to the east of the Kennedy Expressway, an enormous building built over 100 years ago that has its first floor entirely, that was commercial, and then with a factory above, it is entirely
Well,
residential.
that works because it's a raised first
It is not raised. You walk directly in from the sidewalk to the residential units, knowing one person that lives in it, and they line up on the street. So I want to dispense with the idea that ground floor residential doesn't work. I also am going to say that I'm going to vote strongly no on this project, but not because I don't want condos at the site. I think that a 45-foot condo building would be a perfect use for this site, but I strongly reject the idea of commercial or office at this residential site.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm open for a motion. Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Luxpati and Commissioner Mitchell. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
Commissioner Quayne?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman?
No.
Commissioner Velazquez?
Aye.
Commissioner Paradise is absent. Commissioner Luxpati?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman? Aye. Commissioner Matei is absent, and I'll vote aye. Motion is passed. This case still has to go before the Board of Trustees for final approval. They have their meetings on the first and third Mondays of every month. If we have your name, we will notify you when that meeting will be. You're more than welcome to come and speak to them about your concerns, and that's it. Okay. Any other business before the board? There are none. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending.